down there. There was not a whole lot going on. And so I said, I'm going to leave a couple of cameras here, and then I'll come back and get them in the morning on the way back to Missouri. So this was about 1 o'clock. I placed the cameras, and we left and went back to camp and kind of fooled around and, went to exploring our campsite and then just kind of called it a night. So I went back the next morning to get my cameras, and I go down there, and there's several logs that were big trees that were just kind of laying around. They'd been cut by hunters. Obviously, wanted to get their kill out of there, so they cut these big trees. I go back down there to retrieve my cameras, and there on on a tree limb, which is about 8 feet long, big tree that had been cut, was 6 rocks, 5 on one end, which was me, the leader, which was a long, pointy rock, and the 4 expedition goers, the people that paid to go on the expedition. At the other end of the tree was another rock. That was my partner, who couldn't make it both nights, and the 5 people on the other side, the 5 rocks, was me and the 4 expedition goers.
So they were leaving, for lack of a better word, they were leaving rocks to represent you folks.
Yes.
And they segregated them because they came at different times.
Well, they segregated because we were there, but my partner couldn't make it. So right. He was there, but not there.
Right. He was segregated. Right.
Yeah, it blew my mind because
they knew he was around.
Well, they knew he was around, and we were there the day before.
Okay.
And he and I were down there. And my point is that they knew I was coming back the next morning to get my camera. And that gifting was sitting there waiting for me. And what they didn't know was Harold wasn't coming with me, my partner, because he lives in Illinois. So he was going back up to where he lives. Mm-hmm. And I was heading back to Missouri, Kansas City. So they knew when we were down there the day before, they recognized it. This is my hypothesis, but it's really more probable a reality than a hypothesis. They knew, they recognized us when we went back. They knew I was coming back because they probably watched me or heard me talking about placing the cameras. So they knew I was coming back the next morning to get my camera, and that was, for me, that was them telling me, we know you, how you doing? It was just and here's the other part, was that on another tree trunk, and I've got pictures, I can send them to you if you're interested,
Absolutely.
There was 2 rocks on one tree trunk that it was down. And these are big trees. I'm talking about 2-3 feet high. They're probably 2.5 to 3 foot diameter.
Mm-hmm.
They're big 60-70 foot trees that have fallen and been cut. There was 2 rocks on one and the end of one tree. My partner is kind of short and squat, kind of short and round, and I'm kind of tall and I'll say slender. I could lose a little weight, but I'm tall and slender. He's short and round. There was 2 rocks. One was a big round rock, and one was a smaller, more slender rock.
They picked the type of rock on purpose.
Yeah, and I took those 2 rocks and took them back to my car and dusted for prints. And I carry a DNA kit with me at all times, by the way, but there was nothing on there. It just blew me away because in the book that I already written that you've got, I talk about them counting, and they knew I was coming back. Now, here's how I come to this conclusion. I left at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. 1:30 is when he and I left after we left the cameras. This is during the pandemic. There was 18 hours from the time we left for somebody to go down there, leave rock stacks coincided with the number in my expedition and go home. Now, people do rock stacking. I don't know if you're familiar with rock stacking, but people do rock stacking when they're on hikes in the nature and they're becoming one with Mother Nature. They'll stack a couple of rocks and maybe leave a feather from a bird or a leaf.
Or even for marking trails like a cairn.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that happens. But during a pandemic, they would have had to come down there, and being October, it got dark around 5:30. Mm-hmm. So they would have had 4 or 5 hours to drive over there from the time I left, and me not passing them on the way out, to go out, take a hike, and make a rock stack, and pay your homage to Mother Nature, and all that good kumbaya stuff. And that's entirely possible, but just not probable. It's just the timing and the numerology and the symbology of everything that happened.
That time of year in that short snapshot of time, it's not likely.
No, it's just not likely. And then you get into the you're familiar with Occam's razor?
Yes, but explain it, please.
Well, Occam's razor is the theory, and it's a scientific thing that basically the more you have to try to explain why something happened, it's less likely that it happened. The explanation that takes the least amount of convincing or imagination is the most likely reason for the event. So it's the most simple and effective, the basic and simple explanation is usually the one. And even though I'm talking about an esoteric, abstract situation, that is still more likely than random hikers. And there was nobody there, by the way. When we got there, there was nobody there. There's nobody there when we left. It's not a place that people go often. This little area, it's got a reputation of you don't go here after dark. Nobody in town, not the baddest, most macho hunter that known to man will go in this area after dark. It's just got a reputation. So the likelihood is just not all that great. And it was what it was. It was them telling me, hey, we were from last year. And we were leaving these rocks because we want you. I think they were testing to see if I'd even notice. And, what if there were 7 rocks there and a squirrel was running by and knocked a rock off the tree? I mean, I've run through all the scenarios, and it is what it is. They left that there because they knew I was coming back, and they were saying, hello, we remember you from last year. People are going to listen to this and go, oh, God, I got smoked something, Well, I kind of wish I was, but I wasn't. It was a hello. It was a tap on the shoulder. That's just what it was.
Well, you used the term gifting. It was almost like they were giving you something. They were acknowledging you were there. This was kind of a gift. They stacked these rocks to acknowledge that you and your friends were there, and that's what they did. Yep. Did they leave the ultimate gift? And the ultimate gift would have they walked in front of the camera.
Nope. No, they didn't. And I think that was the other kind of, FU was just like, well, we want to be friends, we want to communicate with you, but no, you're not getting a picture, and because they knew I was coming back to get them. And it was right by that tree. It was probably, 30 feet away and about 10, 15 feet straight up because we're, like I said, in a deep ravine. So bottom line, they knew it was Harold and I, and they knew I was coming back in the morning to get my camera. And that was there waiting for me. Pure and simple, end of conversation. That was it. I mean, that was what it was. You can tell me it was something else, but that's what it was. It's just that I was going, oh my God, they know us. They know it was me. They knew they recognized us. They remember us. Oh my God.
That's a lot of things. That's a fantastic story. And when I read your book, and more important, when I looked at the pictures that you had in your book, and these are things that I had seen in the woods many years. One of my favorite things to do is to go on long walks in the woods down paths that just aren't used very often. And then you're going on the regular path. You think off to the right. Well, here's a path that it looks like somebody has used, or maybe they used to use it a long time ago, but let's try going here, but keep our eye on this. So we're kind of close. We're not going to get lost, but we're off the beaten path.
Mm-hmm.
And you stumble upon things like stacked up limbs in a teepee type shape. Almost like little forts that kids would have made or something like that. And I've seen these often. And I've always thought to myself, why would somebody come all the way out here in the middle of nowhere and walk 4 miles from the trailhead to set this thing up that's not really a fort or a camp? They didn't use this to sleep. Why did somebody do this? And it's very obvious. It's very evident that something did this. It didn't happen just by chance. The wind didn't blow and these things didn't go together. But then when you showed me these pictures, I thought, this is what they do. Occam's razor. That's the simplest explanation.
Yeah.
The difficult explanation is, a group of people went out there and they walked 5 miles into the wilderness. They started to build a fort and then walked away. Nobody does that. Nobody does that.
Yeah, there's rare occasions where survivalists, and there is a group that kind of does this thing, but it's very rare, and they live there and use the area, and then they leave. But it's very rare. There's some survival groups that go out and practice things of that nature, and they'll bring tarps and they'll make the teepee-looking structure, and then they'll wrap a tarp around it so they got a place to stay dry and warm,
okay.
So to speak. But it's very rare and few and far between that is done, and usually when they do it, they dismantle it. And so it's just the intricacy of these structures. Like I said in the book, what are the odds of 3 or 4 different species of tree coming together into a structure that could have fallen that way naturally? If you look at a structure, they're going to have multiple species of trees within that structure. Then you have to look up and down and go, where did this pine trunk come from? Where did this white oak branch come from? Because there's nothing from which they could have fallen. They were taken over there and made into a structure for a specific reason. Maybe the different species of trees mean different things. Who knows? But in my really simplest explanation is, if you think that falls randomly into these complex structures, you take 5 chopsticks, throw them straight up in the air. How many hundreds of thousands of times will you have to do that before it falls into a complex structure? Millions? 2 million? I mean, how many?
Exactly.
It just doesn't happen that way. It's the Occam's razor thing. It won't happen with some incredible rare exception.
Well, and when somebody tries to explain something like that too, that's when I roll my eyes, because it's akin to the old theory that if you get an infinite amount of monkeys on an infinite amount of typewriters, one of them one day, and give them an infinite amount of time, one of them one day is going to write all the complete works of Shakespeare. Yeah, okay, it could happen, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's possible, but not probable.
Exactly.
Sums it up in a pretty succinct way. So the hoaxing thing, well, if I'm a hoaxer and I'm an old comic, I'm a practical joker, I'm a smartass, I love a practical joke, but I want to see the fruits of my endeavors. Am I going to go 4 or 5 miles into the forest and put on a monkey suit and risk getting shot? Or am I going to go 4 or 5 miles into the forest and put together a big structure and it's going to freak people out? Well, I want to be there when I see the look on their faces. So am I going to sit there for weeks, months, years? waiting for the right people to walk by at exactly the right time, and how many people are going to walk back 4 or 5 miles into a forest. And